Anyway,
sorry. Right, PhoneGap.
yeah, so PhoneGap. So it's going to be a fairly quick thing going through it because there's so much you can cover, but at the same time it is quite a simple concept. How PhoneGap came about, a hack event a few years ago is when like iOS was picking up and everything, and I think at this stage there was talk about doing native apps, but that had only just happened. So it was at a conference, that escapes my name, but I can find out later on and let you guys know. But a group of people got together and they said, right, we're web developers, we've been developing these web apps for the iPhone and other stuff. Wouldn't it be cool if we didn't have to throw away all that work we did, we could just put it into the app? And someone thought, well, okay, you know, essentially, if you created an app with a UI web view, and on the iPhone that's basically Safari web window, why couldn't you have, you know, essentially a doc root, so a www folder, and then basically you're serving stuff locally, but then also it's got the ability to punch out. So if you put JavaScript in there, do an AJAX call, go to the server, talk to the server, and pull bits and pieces in. So people started thinking about it, and then they thought, okay, well, all these smartphones, they've all got something in common when they're emerging. They're all sort of, well, the main ones, so Apple, this really terrible drawing, but there you go. So you've got Apple, Android, BlackBerry, Palm, Windows, and then you've got Symbian. And what they all have in common is they're referred to as smartphones. And so the terminology now, they also call phones that can't do those things dumb phones as a result. So these are all smartphones. And what they have in common is they all go on the web. They've all probably got 3G, or at least they can get on WAP. They all have cameras. A lot of the newer ones here, especially these ones here, they'll have an accelerometer in it, GPS, or, you know, all the bells and whistles. So what they realised was all these phones have something in common. So if you could develop an app in HTML, CSS, JavaScript that would work on all those things, that would be perfect, because it's like game developers. You bring out a game, but you want to put it on every device. You want to put it on the Xbox, PlayStation, everything else, and the key to that is portability. And the thing that's stopping that happening with these devices is the fact that uses iOS, that uses Android, BlackBerry's got its own Java-based thing, Palm's got whatever it uses, what is it, WebOS, yeah. Windows has got whatever it's using, and Symbian's using Symbian. So the problem is you can't code for that and then port it. You can kind of mix and match around a bit. So what someone came up with the idea for is PhoneGap. It literally is the middleman that marries your web app to the device, but also unlocks the power that's in that device. And the way that it does that, and if I use these really as an example, because those are the main two things, but I mean, again, you can do it on all of these ones, is that in iOS you basically get a Objective-C project, really bare bones empty one. And what it does, it exposes the device like UID and the camera and everything else, it exposes it out to JavaScript. And then in PhoneGap there's a JavaScript library which you then say, okay, it's as easy as saying this, like I want to get the location, and then depending on what device it's on, you make that JavaScript call, it calls that to PhoneGap, and PhoneGap says, okay, well, I'm PhoneGap, and I'm the iOS version of PhoneGap, so we're on an iPhone or we're on an iPad, this is how I make the API call to this device, get me the location, longitude, latitude, passes it back in a well-formatted way, so it's the same throughout all of them. So effectively, what that means is, you build once, and you run on many, so it becomes device agnostic. And really, that's all there is to it. And the things you can do are location, you can do sound recording, media playback, you can get the camera, you can go out to the web, you can use local storage, obviously because it's an HTML app, you can either use HTML local storage or you can use the storage on the device. And if you want to take it further, you can create these things called plugins. And what that is, and this is where I always think it's a little bit of a grey area, because if you're starting to write plugins, you should probably be writing a native app for the device. Because effectively what you do is you identify that you can do something with that device. So say on an iPhone you want to do, I don't know, you want to get the person's music library or whatever. You write the plugin for that. You then expose that to the JavaScript interpreter, and you make the call to that, and it works. But of course, then you have to write the same plugin, but the Android version. So you go down that route. And to be honest, if you're starting to get down that route, you should maybe be thinking about making a native one anyway. The benefits are, like the OilCo app that you made, there's absolutely no reason at all why you couldn't just drop that in the www folder, slap it into iOS, slap it into Android, put it in the marketplace, and all it would be doing is exactly the same thing as if you went to www.oilco.com / whatever, there'd be no difference, same code base. And then if you want to do an update, you just change the stuff on there, or even if you were smart about it, you could get it to punch out to the internet and pull down the latest version of that page as well, because like I said, you could do AJAX calls, so all you'd have to do then is put constraints within the app to say, well, if we're not connected to the internet, tell the user you're not connected, which is easy to do, because you can actually make a JavaScript call locally and say, is the network reachable? And if it isn't, then you don't make the call to pull down that page. And that's it. That's really all there is to it. Any questions?
Lots.
Go on.
Gotta fill out for now. What are the limitations to it?
So the limitations...
It sounds like the best thing since sliced bread.
Limitations are exactly basically what I was saying with the plugins, is that there will be certain things that you'll want to do that PhoneGap won't expose to you, so you'll have to write them code. I mean, I can't.
So basically, when the library doesn't support a feature that's on a
platform, then you can write it. Now the benefit is though that there is a community out there, and other people will write those plugins, and then you can just, it's a case of dropping it into your Xcode project and then putting the JavaScript hook in and calling that. And the same goes for Android. But the issue there is if you find like there's one for augmented reality that was built. It doesn't really work very well, but it was built for iOS. You don't have that equivalent on Android, so what you then have to do is write in your code, well, if you're on Android, well, you just do the JavaScript call, you say, is it possible to run this plugin? And if it isn't, then you don't expose the link or whatever. So that's a limitation, but also it's stuff like, you're not going to be running 3D graphics on it, you're not going to be doing stuff like that. It is going to be simple utility apps, and what I would recommend, and what I've done at home, when I've done it, is I use jQuery Mobile, or I use JQ Touch for the look and feel and interface. Then I drop it into the web app, and literally you'd be hard pushed to know that it was a web app running inside the native app, because you download it from the App Store, or you get given it in a binary, and you put it on there. It's got the icon. You can put Retina graphics on it because it's all relative with resolution. So as long as you get the images right, and in fact there's loads of documentation out there to tell you how to fool it as well with CSS to use the ×2 images that you've got. Which is a thing with iPhones to scale them up. So yeah, I mean you can build, like I said, you just build apps that look and feel just like a normal iPhone app. And again, you can get a skin for Android for JQ Touch that mimics that sort of look. And then that's the only limitation I'd say as well. If you build something that works on all of them, you have to then take into consideration, well, you might want to change the look and feel, but again, it's a style sheet. We do it every day with other stuff, so that's even easier than writing a whole other app that replicates the functionality of the other one.